I will explain about the introduction of the Shapley value. Shapley value is a concept used in a game theory to describe a way to fairly distribute benefits and costs among a group of cooperating players when two or more players or factors are involved in a strategy to achieve a desired outcome or payoff. That is when a game theory is used. Cooperative game theory serves as the foundation for the Shapley value. By using it, a player's participation can be given a value that corresponds to the final outcome of the game. The idea of Shapley values originated in the literature on cooperative game theory in the 1950s. In the original form, Shapley values were used to fairly credit a player's contribution to a game's outcome. Assume we have a cooperative game where a group of players works together to generate value for each other. Shapley values capture the marginal contribution of each player to the outcome if we can calculate the game's total payoff. For example, if two friends share a taxi to two different locations, the total bill can be divided based on the Shapley value. So, this case study is about applying Shapley value in real life to solve the free rider problem. By treating peer evaluations as a cooperative game and treating each group member fairly to reduce the impacts of collisions, this study applies the Shapley value to peer evaluations conducted in classes. The Shapley value method is used to determine the fair marks that should be awarded to individuals in groups, where there is uneven participation based on the scenario analysis. Situations that support the free rider problem were presented as scenarios using cases involving 2 and 3 students members. By applying the Shapley value concept in this study, results in what might be considered a contribution consistent mark allocation for group assignments. Next, what is the issue that discussed in the case study? So, based on the case study, the issue is about the free rider that usually happens in group projects and assignments. First, the free rider means that people enjoy the benefit without paying the burden. Free rider in group work occurs when one or several members do not do their part. If the same grade is given to all group members, the grade will be misleading and unfair. As a result, one or more members have the chance to shift their focus from lending a hand and reducing the amount of work they put in, knowing that they will still get a profit from the efforts of other members. This free rider problem frequently arises in group tasks for some reasons. So, we assume that a group will include at least two distinct student types, which is the low achievers and the higher achievers, who may or may not be close friends. Due to these factors, they might find it difficult to collaborate and communicate with other team members, and they frequently keep quiet and watch what others do. Therefore, the free rider problem arises because of this combination of people in a group. So, the main problem with this action is the group's ability to form coalitions. The free rider issue causes two problems for the free rider. First, they may receive grades they don't deserve, and second, they may not comprehend the fundamental ideas the project seeks to communicate. In this regard, we suggest utilizing the Shapley value concept to lessen the above-mentioned issues.
The goal of the analysis is to distribute the individual marks to each group member according to their participation in the group coalition assessment. If peer contribution evaluation is used, each member shows their contribution in the group assessment during peer evaluation, and everyone gets this privilege. Given this contribution, this study might be helpful to the lecturers or instructor in any profession when determining how to allocate grade based on the performance. Therefore, by implementing Shapley value in this analysis, it can provide students more equitable grade based on their contribution and determine whether or not a member contributed equally. In the comparison to the traditional teaching method, studies have shown that group work offers great learning, but it may lead to the new problem, which are free riding. When it comes to the term free rider, also known as a person who obtains something without doing anything. For example, in this analysis, one of the group members had less contribution due to unfair distribution of tasks, or did not do any work but they have marked the same as others. it will be unfair to them. Academic grades are very important to every student achievement, so it is very critical to evaluate them separately even in the group assessment. Therefore, it is very important to discover and prevent the free riders before grading group assessment. The Shapley value had been applied to the context of the education in this study. The goal of the study is to identify a suitable technique that teachers can be used to distribute marks for group assignment based on the diverse contribution of group members. The group assessment were treated as a cooperative game because there are needed to be a coalition of more than one person to form a group that had the same interests. Each member need to contribute equally in the group task. Thus, the peer evaluation needs to be done so that students can state their contribution to the task in the form of percentage. This will be a technique to tackle the free rider because it would be a problem if they did not discover it earlier since they will get the same mark as others. Therefore, the Shapley value method were implemented to give fairness to contribution of each member.
We'll continue the presentation with the next part, which is alternatives. So what are the alternatives to combat free rider problem in group assessment problem? In this case, we apply Shapley value concept. There are two scenarios of discovering the appropriate marks for each student. It is noted that the student's group mark is 80 over 100. Okay, now let's take a look at the first scenario, which is a case of two students. Since there are only two students, so each student must contribute 50%. However, we can see from the first table that there's inequality of contribution, where student E will contribute 55% and student B will contribute 45%. And it is unfair, right? Because student E will contribute more than 50% and student B will contribute less than 50%. Therefore, Shapley value method is applied. So we can take a look at the second table, which Shapley value for student E is 55%, while Shapley value for student B is 45%. And the mark allocation of student A is 80. It is noted that the student's group marks is 80 over 100. So why student A get 80 marks? Because the Shapley value is 55%, which is it is equal and more than 50% the contribution that they should give in this coalition. However, for student B, the Shapley value is less than the contribution that they should give, which is 55% is less than 50%. Therefore, the mark allocation for student B is 72. And how do we get 72? Is 55% over 50, which is the contribution that they should give, times 80, which is the student's group marks. That's how we get 72 marks for student B. The next scenario is a case of three students. To be fair, the contribution must be 100 over n, where n is the number of total students. So in this case, each student must contribute 33.33%. However, we can see from the right table above, it shows the unequal contribution by every student. Student A will contribute 125 over 3%, while student B will contribute 110 over 3%, and student C will contribute 65 over 3%. And you can see at the right table below shows the coalition and the Shapley value for each student. And there are a total of 6 coalition, which is ABC, ACB, BAC, BCA, CAB, and CBA. So the Shapley value for student E is 37.5% and it is greater than 33.23%. So the mark allocation for student E is 80, and for student B, the Shapley value is also higher than the contribution that they should give, which is 35 is higher than 33.20%. So student B will also get 80 marks. As for student C, the Shapley value is 27.5% and it is slightly lower than the contribution that they must give, which is 33.23%. So for the mark allocation for student C, is count as 27.5, which is the Shapley value of student C, over 100 over 3, which is the contribution that they give, which is 33.33%, times 80, which is the student's mark allocation, and student C will get the total mark is 66. Move on to the next part, which is recommendations to improve solution to the problems. So peer evaluation is one of the most recommended in order to be fair in group assessment marks distribution. It is an evaluation for every student to evaluate their group members. Besides, there is a questionnaires and they need to give score from 1 to 5 for each of their group members. If they are satisfied enough with their group members' contribution, they will give higher score like 4 to 5 score. And if they are not satisfied with their group members, they can give 1 or 2 score. And the total score of peer evaluation will make a student different from one another because if you contribute more, they will give you higher score. The total score of the peer evaluation will show how much your group members satisfies with your contribution in order to complete the group assessment. We are coming to the last part, which is conclusion. A coalition between students is formed for group assessment, and usually there's a common problem related to group work, which is free rider problem. Also, in a group, there must be someone that are free rider, the most function person, and the one who we need to push them to do the work. So we can see that the contribution of each student are different. Therefore, in a conclusion, by applying Shapley value method, we can satisfy every student because the marks of GA follow the contribution they gave in preparing the GA. It is fair, right? Also, it can be improved with peer evaluation where students will evaluate their group members, and also from this evaluation, lecturer can identify which students contribute more or less. Finally, applying Shapley value concept and improving by using peer evaluation can combat free rider problems because it will push them to contribute in the group project in order to get good marks in group assessment. That's all from us. Thank you.